Tumakas na mga kababayan, yung isa sa mga officials ni Inday, lumipad pa Amerika. Sabi, kahapon pa lang mga kababayan, ngayon yung schedule ng hearing. Tapos kahapon, lumipad na po. Malinaw, sabi nga po mga kababayan, flight is a sign of guilt. Pag laging umiiwas po, tumatakas, pag tinatanong, malinaw po yun na tanda na talagang may tinatagong kasalanan. Kasi ang tao na walang tinatago, walang rason na umiwas. Ayan po yung Chief of Staff ni Inday, si Zulaika Lopez. Umalis na ng bansa. Malamang sa malamang mga kababayan, i-content na to ng Congress at ipapahanap tulad po kay Alice Goo. Matindi yung mga revelasyon po. Kahit wala si Inday at sa kayong mga opisyal niya na pinagbawalan niyang mag-attend, lalong kamangha-mangha yung mga revelasyon. Ngayon, sabi po ni Congressman Romeo Acop, this is a technical malversation. There is a technical malversation sa paggamit ng confidential fund mga kababayan ni Inday. Sinalamang ka po yung pondo. Talaga mga kababayan, nilunok talaga po. Matindi yung pakalunok po. At hindi lang yung 125 million yung iniimbestigahan. The whole budget, iniimbestigahan na po mga kababayan. Pati yung paggamit na yung regular budget. Pero yung confidential fund, combined, 612.5 million pala yun. Binobosisi na rin po mga kababayan, hindi lang yung 125 million, kundi yung kabuuan sa 612.5 million pesos combined na confidential fund ni Inday, Office of the Vice President, pagkatapos yung sa DepEd. Malamangan niya Mr. Maravillas, magpapresko na naman si Inday niyan mamaya or bukas. Abangan po natin kasi pag nagpapapreskon po si Inday, lalo napapahamak yung lalo siyang napapahamak, kaya kaabang-abang po. Imbes na makatakas po sa pananagutan, lalong nalulubog si Inday. But before ko mga kababayan ibigay sa inyo yung full story ng balitang yan, click subscribe muna dito sa ating YouTube channel and hit the notification bell para lagi po kayong updated sa mga kaganapan dito sa ating bansa. Like and share na rin po ninyo ng ating video. At huwag na rin po ninyo na-skip yung ating mga commercial ads para tuloy-tuloy lang ang pag-unlad ng Bagong Pilipinas. At itong ating programa mga kababayan, atid sa inyo nitong ating mga sponsors. Firmax Firming and Lifting Cream. Pinapay po sa mga pulses in affected area. Mainam po ito sa mga pains at paninigas ng mga kaso-kasuan. Ito sa mukha naman yung application, anti-aging, Automax po siya. Ito ay Glow Zero mga kababayan. Whitening po siya. Made in South Korea. Ito naman po, Ningxia Red Mix Fruit Drink. Gawa po siya sa goji berry. May anti-cancer properties po siya. At sa mga nagana po ng malinis and spacious fitness gym, pumunta lang po kayo sa aming Colossal Fitness Gym. May Grab ka rental din po kami. At bills payment po sa aming office. At saka sa mga mahilig po sa mga imported bags, manood po kayo sa live selling ni Madam Eileen Rosales sa kanyang Eileen Closet po. Pati mga shoes, ito yung kanya po. Ito yung kanyang page. Kita ninyo, napakagandang mga online selling po siya. Si Madam Eileen Rosales.
I love how it...
Cellphone number niya po, 773-798-7816. Balikan natin yun ng ating kwento. Pinatakas na ito ni Inday. Umalis ka na niya muna, magtago ka na muna sa ibang bansa. Magpalamigaan niya muna. Abang kami rito, nagpaplano ng mga bilang designated survivor. Kailangan na niya madaliin na natin kasi desidido yung Congress. Talaga pong desidido yung Congress, pati po sa AJK investigation, yung sa Quadcom, sa Pogo, sa AJK, at sa kung ano-ano pa. Yung sabi ni Speaker Martin, Hindi tayo anya papayag sa kadiliman. Di ba? Yan yung ganyang speech, mga kababayan, sa pag-resume ng sesyon ng Congress. Kahapon, hindi anya tayo papayag sa kadiliman. So malinaw, hindi tatantanan ng Congress ito pong mga ginasangkutan ng mga mag-amang Duterte at iba pang mga previous officials ng previous administration. So kinonfirm po kanina ng House panel na si OBP Chief of Staff Zulaika Lopez umalis na po ng bansa. Lopez reportedly left at 7:31 p.m. aboard Philippine Airlines Flight PR-102 bound for Los Angeles, California. So sabi po dito sa balita, the committee chaired by Congressman Joel Chua is reviewing budget issues concerning Vice President Sara Duterte. However, personnel from the OBP refused to attend today's hearing, questioning the committee's jurisdiction and asserting that the inquiry is not in aid of legislation. Ang sabi ni Inday ng kanyang opisina, yung subpena niya na inisyo to its official invalid. Naging invalid pa yung subpena. Ang rason, mga kababayan, it was set niya for a hearing on a different date. Nagpalusot pa. Pinospone kasi ng House panel yung hearing nung October 17 kasi nga nasa kasagsagan tayo ng masamang panahon ng bagyong Katrina. Kaya nireschedule po. Nireschedule dito sa November 5. Nakakuha ng rason. Ay October, hindi 17, October 28. Yan sabi ng OBP. The OBP said the subpoena issued for a hearing on October 28 was only transmitted to agency on November 4 anya. As the said subpoena issued by the Honorable Committee bears the information that it was issued for a past October 28, 2024 hearing schedule, which was also reset, it would be improper to receive the same. Thus, there was no subpoena for the scheduled proceedings on November 5, 2024. Inanapan po ng butas. Nireschedule nga, inannounce nga. Napakalinaw yung announcement ng House panel para niya maka-concentrate tayo sa pagtulong muna sa bawat distrito itong mga congressmen kasi nga tinamaan tayo ng Katrina, ng baha, kaya nireschedule ngayon. Inanapan ng butas po ng OBP. Tapos sabi pa ng OBP, the ongoing inquiry anya by the House panel is unnecessary and plagued with irregularities. Ang plague po ng irregularities, yung confidential funds, pati nga kanina, mga kababayan, pinapanood ko yung hearing, pati yung regular budget ni Inday, may mga nasilipong problema. Sa pagtatanong po ni Congresswoman Swansing, hindi lang yung confidential funds po ang puno ng irregularities. Tapos ngayon, ang sinasabi ng OBP na yung House panel inquiry plagued with irregularities at it is unnecessary. Anong unnecessary? Napakahalaga na malaman ng mga mamamayang Pilipino kung paano ginamit ninda yung pera ng bayan. Hindi mo pera yan. So sabi pa dito ni Inday, the congressional probe niya is not in aid of legislation at it lacks clear legislative objectives or contemplated legislation that is expected as an outcome of the deliberations. Malabo po yung paliwanag ng OBP. Malabo pa sa sabaw ng pusit. Pinaliwanag na po many times ng Congress kung ano yung gusto nilang ma-achieve dito po sa legislative inquiry na ginagawa po sa pundo ni Inday, lalo na sa confidential funds, para makakrap sila ng batas na mag-iigpit po sa paggastos. Kasi napakarami pong irregularities, anomalies ang nasili po o malingasaw po. Kaya sabi po ni Congressman Romeo Acop, there is a technical malversation. Yan sabi ni Acop, if the liquidation is wrong, definitely kung saan napunta yung pera, hindi sa tama. Yung pondo, dalawa lang ang pupunta noon. sa bulsa or nagamit sa ibang bagay. Boss, hindi po tama. Kung ginamit sa ibang bagay, and I think the lawyers of COA would agree with me that there's technical malversation kasi iba ang purpose ng pondo, ginamit sa iba. Pati yung liquidation po, sabi doon sa investigation po, bogus. Yung mga projects na ginastosan ni Inday, bogus. Pati liquidation, siyempre bogus. Panoorin natin mga kababayan yung mga pagtatanong ni Congressman Romeo Acop. Ayan po.
Attorney Pua.
Si Atty. Puwa, umalis na pala sa OBP. Tinirminate na daw niya yung
Would it be correct
contract.
that you stated in the previous hearing na only the Vice President and the SDO know where the confidential funds went?
Based on the documents, Your Honor, I would assume so.
Did you state that?
What I was asked, Mr. Chair, I was asked, Your Honor, I think by Representative Castro, if I knew anything about it. And I said na sa totoo, wala po talaga akong kinalaman sa management or operation ng confidential funds.
Ogas kamay si
So
Puwa.
if I remember correctly, and the transcripts would probably bear me out, tinanong niya, kung hindi ikaw sino? So I said, I would assume the signatories, Your Honor, of the certifications and of the other documents. And she asked me who, so I said the SDO and probably the head of agency.
So yung sagot po ninyo, it's a presumption.
Well, Your Honor, kasi hindi ko po alam kung saan...
Because you answered the question under oath.
Yes, Your Honor.
And therefore, you stated the name of the Vice President and the Special Dispersing Officer. That they're the only ones who know where the confidential funds went.
That is correct, Your Honor. No?
That is
Because
why I asked
based
you
on the documents, yes.
whether you stated this statement in the last hearing.
Yes, Your Honor. But I think just to clarify, I mentioned that it was based on the documents, Your Honor, because the documents would point that way.
Kasi kung titingnan ko yung statement po ninyo, ay kung wala nang ibang nakakalam kung saan napunta yung pondo, ay dadalawang bagay lang ang nangyari. Di ba? Kasi either ibinulsa nung ni VP o ni STO o
Ibinulsa?
ginamit sa ibang bagay. Ni VP at saka ni STO. Hindi po ba?
Your Honor, please.
Masusukol na po?
Hindi, yun po yung sagot
But
ninyo.
I wasn't
That's why-
alluding to that, Your Honor. I
I beg your pardon?
I wasn't alluding to that, Your Honor, if I may
No,
beg your
actually-
indulgence. Opo.
Pawa, correct me if I'm wrong. Di ba? Yung pondo allocated sa office. Tama. Nag-cash advance sila from Land Bank. Tama. Land Bank, nag-cash advance sila doon, dinala sa opisina. Ang makaalam na lang doon ay yung head of office or head of agency at saka yung special dispersing officer. Tama. Di ba ba? At yung special dispersing officer, yun yung mag-allocate kung saan pupunta yung gagastusin yung pondo.
Kaya tumakas
Di
na po pa Amerika.
Sagutin niyo ako, Kowa. Do you agree with me? Yes. Pakisabi sa mic para marinig ko lahat.
With your permission, Your Honor, yes po, Your Honor.
Yes. And therefore, kung yung liquidation or clearing process ay hindi totoo at bogus, ibig sabihin, nagamit yung pera sa ibang bagay. Would you agree with me, Kowa?
Based on your statement, Your Honor, and based on which you said that the liquidation or the documents are bogus, so we presume that the funds, no other evidence presented, were illegally disbursed.
Tayo kumbinsido
Confirm?
sa mga sagot
Illegally
ninyo
disbursed.
at saka sa mga katanima kasama na yung DEPs or documentary evidence of payments or acknowledgement receipts ay puro may diferensya? Di po ba? And therefore, pag yung liquidation instruments, part of your clearing process or liquidation process, ay mali-mali na, ay saan napunta yung pera? Tell me. Dalawang bagay lang po. Kasi dami ko na naimbestigan na ganito nung nasa pulis ako eh. Saka sa PCINP. Di ba? Either ibinulsa or ginamit sa iba. Either way, mali. Di po ba? Would you agree, Kowa?
If the liquidation po is bogus,
Kasi hindi naman napunta doon sa totoo eh. Doon sa clearing instruments na binigay. Di ba? Kung naibulsa, masama, ninakaw mo na eh, di ba? Ngayon, kung ginamit sa iba, technical malversation yun. Would you agree with me, attorney?
that is assuming it was not used as confidential expense.
Eh, mali na nga yung clearing instrument sa liquidation process eh. Ay, yung mali yung pag-clear at saka pag-liquidate, what is your conclusion?
That the funds were not used as confidential.
Supposed to be used.
As
As it is supposed to be
It's
used.
supposed to be used.
Yes. That is the logical conclusion. Hindi po ba? Would you agree with me, Madam Attorney?
Personal opinion, yes, Mr. Chair.
Ha?
Personal opinion po, Mr. Chair, yes, I would have to agree.
Ewan ko. Pero kasi sa dami na naimbestigahan ko, ganun ang nakikita ko eh. Kayo naman, ang tagal nyo na sa COA, hindi nyo pa rin nakikita yon.
Playing safe?
Di ba? Kasi if your liquidation or clearing process is wrong, di definitely yung kung saan pinuntan yung pera, hindi po dun sa tama. Could you give me an instance na mali yung liquidation process, tama yung pinuntahan ng pera? Pursuant to your guidelines.
Tulala na.
Yun, Sir Chair, personal opinion.
Tulala na po.
the-
Siyempre, playing safe
the
po. Pati
confidential
sila,
funds
accountable
were not
sila.
used as it
Sa
is
COA.
intended. It's already technical malversation.
Yes, kasi kitang-kita naman na yung paggamit po nila sa pondo, eh parang nilegalize lang nila by their submission to you, yung DEPs nila o kaya ARs or acknowledgement receipts. Di ba? Na mali-mali. Would you agree with me?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you. Kasi yun ang nakikita ko na nangyari, process eh. Nag-withdraw sa land bank dahil nandun yung pondo na confidential fund. Dinala sa opisina yung SDO. Hindi ko alam. Kaya nga hinahanap namin yung SDO para tanuhin namin kung saan napunta eh. Paano niya inallocate yung pondo eh. But as it is, yung liquidation instruments ay mali-mali po eh. Kaya sigurado ako, hindi napunta sa tama rin yung pondo. There are only two things na pinuntahan yung pondo. Nagamit sa iba o ibinulsa. Kung ayaw nyo matanggap yun, ako kaya kong tanggapin. Kasi marami na akong dinaanan na investigasyon. Na gano'n. Natameme kayo? Ha?
Natamimi si attorney.
Di ba? Could you please tell us?
Wala eh.
Kasi marami nangyayari ganito eh. Which, I think, you know. Kasi hindi lang naman doon sa OVP yan, tingin ko. Okay? So,
Natamimi po kay Acop, yung taga-COA. Kasi nagpabaya din talaga sila. Kaya kailangan ng legislation po, magkakrap ng batas para higpitan yung mga rules na dapat sundin ng COA. O ngayon, ito pong liquidation instruments na bogus, na-discovery po ito sa pagtatanong ni Congressman Rods Gutierrez, yung taga rito sa amin. Yung one rider, party list representative, panoorin natin yung kanyang pagtatanong. Kasi doon po, mga kababayan, nahaloka yung mga bogus na liquidation instruments. So ito yung pagtatanong ni Congressman Rods Gutierrez. Pakinggan po natin.
Separate records of all transactions and to retain a certified copy or duplicate copy of the required supporting documents and reports on utilization. However, and my questioning is precisely on this, on the acknowledgement receipts attached as justification, yung documentary evidence presented. However, given that the SDO Acosta is not around, I guess we'll be forced to at least to get this, some of the answers, I'll be forced to ask the COA. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to direct my questions perhaps to Attorney Camora from the ICFAO, if they would be so kind to indulge. Just as to add context po, Attorney Camora. We know po that the confidential funds are special in the sense that they respond to, they pertain to a certain purpose only allowable under the Joint Memo Circular. But this does not mean that this is a blank check po, no? It's not a blanket authority that it could be spent without justification. Would that be a fair statement po?
Attorney Camora, you're recognized.
That is correct po, Your Chair.
So,
Mr. Chair.
in line with that and in line with the requirements of the COA, you would ask actually for liquidation reports. Although it's special in the sense that it is directed only to the chairman of the COA, you still have the ICFAO to study this. And in fact, it is the ICFAO who gives the AOMs the notice of disallowance and the notice of credit in relation to confidential fund spending. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
So, Mr. Chair, given the, maybe I have a timeline again of the 2022 confidential fund usage of the OVP. If I understand correctly, it was disbursed within 11 days. This was for December of 2022, and the basis of the funds was a transfer from the contingent fund. But there was an AOM issued by your office. Anong date po nito?
Mr. Chair, the first AOM is dated September 14, 2023.
So for the 2022 confidential funds, September 2023 yung AOM. And the response by the Office of the Vice President was received around what time po kaya?
It was received by the ICFAO on October 19, 2023, Mr. Chair.
October 2023. And one of the findings there was insufficient the DEPs po, no? And this would be pertaining to, in support of the liquidation reports, yung ating mga acknowledgement receipts. Because compared to usual spending by government wherein we actually need official receipts, kapag ang pinag-uusapan po ay confidential or intelligence funds, because precisely confidential dapat yung usage nito, it is sufficient to submit acknowledgement receipts. Tama po ba?
Mr. Chair, since the requirement is documentary evidence of payment, not necessarily official receipt.
Correct.
So they could submit acknowledgement
Attorney Camora,
receipts.
pwede pong pakilakasan po ninyo yung boses ninyo.
Documentary evidence of payment po ang required sa joint circular. So the acknowledgement receipts are acceptable po.
Acceptable. Correct po, no? And I agree with that. So the acknowledgement receipts are acceptable. However, one of the findings of the AOM was kulang nga po yung DEPs. And this is pertaining to the acknowledgement receipts.
The first time na nag-liquidate po sila, wala pa talagang submitted na DEPs.
Opo. So that's why you had the AOMs in September 2023. Part of the findings was the lack of the DEPs, precisely yung mga ARs natin. And then they answered in October 2023. When they filed in October 2023, was it already there, yung DEPs? Yung justification po nila?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it was part of their compliance.
So it was submitted October 2023. After that, there was a notice of disallowance pertaining to that quarter. Kailan po ito na-issue?
Mr. Chair, before that, a notice of suspension was issued. So, normally, after the AOM is issued and the COA is not satisfied with the compliance, we issue a notice of suspension, which was issued on December 13, 2023.
December 2023. And the notice of suspension you mentioned is when the COA is not satisfied. So yung pagsubmit po ng October 2023 DEPs, hindi pa po satisfied yung COA. And what was the reason that you're not satisfied? Mali-mali po ba yung mga AR or kulang pa po yung mga AR?
May mga ibang ARs po na may issues and may kulang pa po na additional documentation on other ARs.
And after the notice of suspension for December 2023, they were given another chance to submit additional documents. Is that correct? Or wala na po?
Meron pa, Mr. Chair. They were given 90 days.
90 days.
To,
When did they, apologies, when did they submit their additional DEPs po? In response to the notice of suspension?
Mr. Chair, we received their compliance on March 13, 2024.
March 2024. And finally, I suppose after this, ito na po yung disallowance?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Anong date po ng disallowance po natin?
The disallowance is dated August 8, 2024, Mr. Chair.
August 2024. Thank you. I'll get back to that po. No? I wanted to establish a timeline because one of the things that we have found with the acknowledgement receipts is that there seemed to be a disconnect in relation to the dates, especially considering the fourth quarter of 2022 CF. Mr. Chair, maybe ask the Secretariat. I don't know if they prepared it. I want to flash on screen an acknowledgement receipt. Here. Is the date legible po sa inyo? Can you see? I'd like to confirm that the date that it says is actually December 28, 2023. Do you see that, Attorney Camora?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And supposedly this was attached. I'm not sure if this would come in for the first batch of response in December 2023 or if it came in with the second batch of response in March 2024. But this is supposedly a DEP presented for the fourth quarter of 2022. Isn't it strange? Not really strange, it's outright false for it to justify an expense in 2022 but the date is 2023. Would that be correct, Ms. Camora? Attorney Camora?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. Actually, one of the findings under the notice of suspension is that some of the acknowledgement receipts were dated December 2023 and some were even undated.
Yes. And this would be the basis for disallowance? Or was this, this was the findings of the AOM po, no?
Yes, that is under the notice of suspension na po, Mr.
Suspension.
Chair. Since nakapag-comply na sila, so yung observation namin was already under the notice of suspension po.
How would it be complied po, Attorney Camora? How did they rectify the AR? My understanding po is pag submitted po yung AR, this is already supposedly presumed to be regular, and then you have an outright problem such as 2023. Although you might say na typographical error, but correct me if I'm wrong, this happens more than once po. Is that correct, Attorney Camora?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Would you know how many ARs exactly yung dated 2023 submitted for 2022?
Mr. Chair, we have attached it in the original notice of suspension. However, we do not have the figures today.
Sige po. Well, just to help you po, no, based on our study, 158 of the acknowledgement receipts have that typographical error. We would understand the typographical error if it happens once or twice, and at most for one individual to make that mistake multiple times. But for
Matindi.
supposedly acknowledgement receipts which come from different sources, this should be different people issuing it po, di ba? these are different people signing off for different expenses. Now, for 158 people to make the same mistake, is that something that would be acceptable? Is that an acceptable margin of error for the COA?
Mr. Chair, they answered in their compliance. As to the
Mr. Chair, apologies. Maybe you know what does it mean to answer with the compliance? So they took back yung AR na mali po yung date, or
no, Mr. Chair, yung compliance nila contained their answers why they had the acknowledgement receipts dated December 2023 and undated acknowledgement receipts.
and what was the answer po, Attorney Camora?
They said they have inadvertently contained clerical or typographical errors indicating 2023 instead of 2022. Considering the nature of confidential activities which are usually conducted discreetly and completed within a short period of time, and in addition to the lack of attention to details of personnel attending to voluminous papers from several individuals, some data and acknowledgement receipts submitted as proof of transactions may have been missed.
Mr. Chair, I apologies. I think that portion would suffice po, Attorney Camora. No? So the answer of compliance, they did not dispute, they did not take back the ARs, but they simply gave that defense that it was an inadvertence, or basically typo nga po siya. But precisely the point, Mr. Chair, that I think that the committee should consider is that it's a typographical error for 158 acknowledgement receipts. This is not something that I think, although we do not argue with the COA, of course, this is their jurisdiction. It is precisely their decision if that compliance would be sufficient. However, I think for us to consider in strengthening the laws that we are going to craft, in support perhaps of the joint memorandum circular, I think we have to be stricter with the acknowledged receipts to be issued. Because, Mr. Chair, I would like to propose one thing. Of course, the COA will not be able to answer this. But given the timeline po, no, September 2023 yung first na AOM, the October 2023 was the compliance with the first batch of ARs, and then December 2023, the notice of suspension. And that was the time siguro po, no, that they were coming up with these new ARs. It would make more sense, Mr. Chair, for them to make that mistake. Because pag nagkaka-typographical error po natin sa date, the usual mistake is you put on the date that is current. Isn't it possible, Mr. Chair, based on human experience, isn't it more likely that these ARs were prepared a year after the fact already? That they were prepared in December 2023, because this precisely coincides with the date in which they submitted the second batch of the ARs. I don't think, Mr. Chair, this was a mistake that was committed in December 2022. This was a mistake that was committed after the fact, after the AOM, and after the notice of suspension, when they were rushing to comply with yung mga butas po na lahat ng COA.
Correct.
I think this is something that the committee should consider.
Dinoktor.
Especially when it comes to the compliance with the COA. We are not faulting the COA, of course, and we respect them. This is their jurisdiction. But one thing that we understand, that we see from the COA, is that generally, they are not really ministerial, but they would err on the side of caution rather than put themselves in the place to, exercise discretion regarding the disbursements by any agency. Sa kanila po, as long as complied yung DEP, and as long as there's an explanation, they would accept it. However, I think the COA has to go above and beyond that requirement. Because, Mr. Chair, just to highlight also how spurious this seems and how bogus. If December 2022 po yung date dapat na
Bogus?
ng AR, tapos December 2023 yung date, it wouldn't even correspond to any confidential funds. It's not possible if ever the reasoning was nagkapalitan ng AR, because I understand that might be one of the excuses for inadvertence. Baka nagkapalitan yung AR for December 23 and December 2022. Pero wala pong December 2023. If we recall, the fourth quarter of the confidential funds for the Office of the OVP was never dispersed. They chose, although it was already included in the our General Appropriations Act, they chose not to disperse yung fourth quarter. So saan po na ilalagay itong December 2023 AR if, in fact, they would say inadvertence, nagkapalitan yan? Or if they say typographical error naman, it wouldn't make sense. What's that doing in December 2022? 158 times po nangyari. More
Matindi.
likely, this was the same mistake committed by perhaps a few persons, which raises the question, are these acknowledgement receipts spurious? Are they bogus? Are they false? In addition to that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to present another acknowledgement receipt. If the Secretariat could please flash yung November 1 po.
Kung Rods, ito ko lang linawin. 158 times na ang date ay 2023.
Mr. Chair, based on what our office has found, 158 of the ARs corresponding to 23.8 million were submitted for the December, for the fourth quarter of 2022 disbursement, but they were citing 2023. Ang sabi nga po ng COA na ang citing the answer of the OVP is that inadvertence po.
Ang dami
given-
naman pagkakamali nun. Kung magkakamali ka, dapat isa lang.
Matinding
Sa
pagkakamali.
2023, last quarter, wala na silang confidential funds. So parang lumalabas, lumagpas yung kanilang liquidation. Sobra-sobra yung liquidation na nilabas nila. Tama po ba yung pagkakaintindi ko sa sinasabi ninyo?
Well, Mr. Chair, your guess is the same as ours, but it could also be na these are ARs belatedly prepared.
Okay. Sige po. Thank you po.
Dinoktor po.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, proceeding onward, may we ask the Secretary to flash yung November 2020, November 17, 2023 AR. Yun. Thank you. Attorney Camora, is it legible po? Can you see that the date is November 27, sorry, 2022. The 2022.
November, I cannot see it. November 17? Mr. Chair?
November 27 po, 2022.
27.
Well, Attorney Commerce, apologies, perhaps di lang kita masyado sa screen, but on paper nakita po na November 27, 2022 po siya. If my understanding is correct, the AR should correspond to the period of the confidential funds actually dispersed and used. Tama po ba? So, although it is for the fourth quarter of 2022, this was submitted as an AR there, it should correspond to the 11 days of disbursement po that they actually had. Because if I understand correctly, anong date nga po yung first, yung pag-issue nung check for the OVP confidential funds?
Ano? December 20, 2022, Mr. Chair.
December 20, 2022. So, definitely, this is after November 27, 2022. Would the COA have, of course, I would not fault COA for this. This is supposedly a question for the Special Dispersing Officer, si SDO Acosta, but given that she's not here, I am constrained to ask the COA, para saan po kaya would this be considered? Because if we also consider, baka sabihin naman natin na typographical error, baka dapat November 2023 po ito, wala rin pong fourth quarter confidential funds ang OVP for 2023. Tama po ba?
Tama po, Mr. Chair.
So in that case, how would the COA appreciate this acknowledgement receipt?
Normally, Mr. Chair, it should be noted that confidential funds should not be used as payment for reimbursement of previous activities. So it would have been flagged as a reimbursement expense, so not allowed.
So this would have been disallowed totally. And perhaps there's a good chance that this is part of the disallowance actually of your But I think, Mr. Chair, what is striking for this committee is, of course, the COA has already acted on the disallowance. But what should be considered is the fact that this could not have happened. I mean, reimbursement might be one explanation, but how could you reimburse something that this was even the first batch of confidential funds? December 21 po ba? Tama ba? December 21?
December 20, Mr. Chair, yung date ng check.
December 20 po yung check. This is the first confidential funds ever issued to the OVP for this administration. Yet they have acknowledged receipts for November 27, 2022. Ibig sabihin po, wala pa pong confidential funds. They're already coming up with their acknowledgement receipts.
Mr. Chair, with the indulgence of Congressman Rodriguez, may I just...
Congressman Abante.
Bago ko makalimutan to, no? Nakalagay dito, yung pakianong audit yung, acknowledgement receipt yan. Ito po ba ay allowed ng COA? Pag gumamit ka nung 150,000 na rewards. Paki-ano nga, yung acknowledgement receipt, pakilagay nga uli. Ayan. Allowed po ba ng COA yan? Yung payment of rewards nakalagay medicines. Allowed po ba ng COA yan?
Mr. Chair, that is one of the observations po. Na,
So therefore, kung yan ang observation nyo, dinisallow nyo.
yes, Mr. Chair. Part
Okay,
of the
so that
disallowance
was actually 150,000 used for payment of rewards for medicines was disallowed by COA. Ganun po ba?
It is one of the disallowed accounts, Mr. Chair, yung payment of reward medicines.
Ito, disallowed to, di ba?
Probably, sir, since kasama naman siya sa...
Attorney, but probably.
Yes, sir. Since it is an acknowledgement
Di
receipt
ba?
of payment of rewards.
You're a good lawyer. You cannot just say probably. You have to be sure about it, di ba? So, talagang disallowed to, di ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
O yan. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Please continue, Congressman Rog.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Congressman Albante. Basically, what we're trying to say here po, no, in relation to the dates, whether this is for reimbursement of, although illegal po, no, it's not supposed to be allowed. Whether this was a justification for reimbursement or this was inadvertence or typographical errors, despite being repeated over 158 times, these are clear red flags po in relation to the AR submitted by the office. And this is something that we should consider. Looking forward, we should consider po this in aid of legislation, perhaps legislation to strengthen this joint circular to make sure that this doesn't appear again, or perhaps stringent penalties for when this is caught. But more important than that, we still have to hold them accountable po, no? For this, although this is already passed, although there's already this notice of disallowance, accountability should be had for this. Now, in addition po, moving forward from these erroneous dates or inadvertent dates, I would like to present another documentary evidence. May we have po the Secretariat flash yung acknowledgement receipt for Mr. or Miss NP. Yun. Attorney Camora, when we're talking of acknowledgement receipts, basically it's something like this one. It's very bare. It just has the amount received, for what purpose, and you have the name and the date. That's all that is required. However, when it comes to the name, is this usually the name of the person or signature or both?
They would give us normally yung name and signature, but actually the signature is which is more important to the COA. Since we know that unsigned documents are really not good documents. So, kung signature lang, okay lang po siya. Pero kung name lang po, we will flag it as unsigned document po.
Yes. And what is the reasoning for this? Because a name can be written by anyone, but a signature is supposedly unique. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So what happens when, for example, here, it may not be seen, it's redacted precisely because it's confidential. However, it could be noted that this name was written in block letters, which are not distinctive by any manner. Yet, this was what was submitted as an acknowledgement receipt. So in cases such as this, it's very possible that someone purporting to be Mr. NP is writing the name for NP. Would that be correct, Attorney Camora?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
So in this case, this would be another case of an irregular AR. Would that be correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And of course, when it comes to the ARs that are just block letters and names, because precisely it could be purporting to be that person, but signed by anyone else, this should be disallowed, Mr. Chair. But of course, as mentioned again by Attorney Camora, alam ko baka narinig din na po kayo with all of these questions for the ICFA, which are all redundant. But it just is an additional proof po that what we're looking at here are red flags when it comes to acknowledgement receipts. And I think we really should strengthen po siguro the DEPs that would be required for confidential funds. Kasi po, hindi po ito biro. And if you look at it precisely, we're talking about a single payment for 400,000 pesos as a reward payment, which could be anyone because hindi nga po signed. Kung sa mga signatures nga po, nagkakaduda tayo kung totoo yung signature. Paano pa kaya pag walang signature at all? How do we know that this person exists? These are some issues that we should consider po, Mr. Chair, when we're going to craft our legislation. to stem the
Problematic
joint
talaga.
referendum circular. Mr. Chair, I had other questions, but I think this could only be answered by SDO Acosta. So I would like to manifest that I would like to join po yung I have the same sentiments as Chairman Abante that these persons invited should appear. At least it would be our 5th hearing already, and still we have no answers. And I think it would the answers really rely on their attendance, and this is only for the accountability for the truth that our people would see. So I think we should really have a harder stance for requiring their attendance. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would now defer and yield to our other colleagues here today. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, COA.
Confirm po. Grabe pong problema. Dinuktor po talaga. Yung liquidation instruments po, bogus. Yan sabi ni Congressman Acop, dalawa lang niya ang pupuntahan niya. Ginamit sa iba na bagay o binulsa. Pariwan niyang mali kasi this is a technical malversation. Ginamit sa ibang bagay, technical malversation. It is a crime, mga kababayan, dito sa ating bansa. Bawal yan po ang malversation, technical malversation. O kung hindi niya, binulsa, lalo na. Sukol na po si Pulturera. Kaya yung kanyang chief of staff po, tumakas na. Sa mga naghanap ng malinis and spacious fitness gym, pumunta lang po kayo sa aming Colossal Fitness Gym. We also offer Grab Car Rental with our brand new 2023 model ng Toyota Innova. We also accept booking for those who are planning to travel via PAL, Cebu Pacific, and other airline companies, local and international, and bills payment for Meralco bills, PLDT, Aleco bills, etc. Ang Colossal Fitness Gym is located at 3rd floor Security Bank Building, Landco Business Park, Legazpi City, Albay. For inquiries, look for Chilon Maravillas. Contact number 0966-802-0949. Yan yung aming Innova. Lagi na pong matao sa amin. Pati mga foreigners po, tingnan ninyo. Mga British tourists sila. Ang lalaki ng katawan na, mga kababayan, nag-gym sa amin. Ito naman po, Indian National. Ito mga mga European sila. Ito naman yung bago naming product na binibenta online, Eye Glow Serum. Whitening po siya galing sa South Korea. Tingnan ninyo yung epekto sa aking anak na architect entrepreneur, Riz Maravillas. For inquiries, look for Riz Maravillas on FB. Ito naman po, Firmax Framing and Lifting Cream. Pinapahid po ito sa mga pulses and affected area. Mainam po ito sa mga pains at paninigas na mga kaso-kasuan. Ito po, Automax Radiant Serum. Sa mukha naman yung application. Anti-aging po siya. You will look 10 years younger than your age. Sa mga cancer patients naman po, baka lang gusto ninyo itong itry. Nengsia Red Mixed Fruit Drink. Hindi man po siya gamot, food supplement siya. Kaya lang, gawa siya mga kababayan sa goji berry. Yung goji berry may anti-cancer properties. Yung mga inquiries ninyo, dumiretso na lang kayo sa aming messenger sa Facebook para masagot namin agad. Ayos po. Ako po si Dante Maravillas. Bye-bye. God bless.